over to Audacity, and in 3, 2, 1, hit it. Hey, Kent.
What?
Why do dogs run in circles?
Why?
Because it's really hard to run in squares.
It's not that hard to run in squares.
If you're doing it full speed, it is.
It's
Anyway.
Twitter talk.
My God, you are just the W'est of downers. Welcome to VetMed.
Jokes.
Have a better sense of humor. Welcome to VetMed for Idiots by Idiots. I'm your host, Corey, the Common Idiot, with my co-host, Kent, Mr. Giggles, the Dr. Idiot. And today we are joined again by our favorite third idiot, Dr. Erin. And we're this time talking about the bird flu, or H5N1, correct? That's the nerd term for it. And we're going to specifically be talking about its effect on the large animal and food animal population, right? So first of all, how you been?
Me, I've been good.
Yeah, I was asking you. I don't give a shit about Kent. Plus, last night was the Lions game. I know how Kent's doing.
Yeah, my voice is a little bit shot too.
Yeah, what can I say? I mean, it's the year 2025. I just survived norovirus. LA is burning. So are Cybertrucks. David Lynch is dead, and TikTok got banned. So.
Oh, but it's back.
It's back. Thank you to President Trump.
Yeah, I'm sure. Even though he's the one who signed the initial executive order that pushed the snowball down the hill towards the village, but
no, whatever. I dated a guy like that once. It was like on again, off again, on again, off again. Wait, I told you this. No, I never said that. No, you gotta break up with dudes like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, America is not ready to break up with their abusive ex.
Who is?
You can't be the slaughterer and the savior, though. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And people are forgetting that. So anyway, what's good? You're in a new position now.
Yeah. So yeah, basically every time I come on this show, I have like 3 different jobs. And I mean, most of the reason for that is because for the longest time I've been under a non-compete, so I wasn't able to practice like client-facing medicine in my area. So I was basically doing literally anything but that to try to kind of keep my footing. And one of the things I did in that time period, which is what kind of gives me the ability to talk about what we're going to talk about that tonight, is I acted as an interim state vet for the state of Connecticut through the summer of 2024. So I did that for 4 months. And I was an emergency appointee. And the reason for the haste of getting somebody into the position that had good poultry industry knowledge was because we knew H5N1 was coming. We didn't know when, but what we wanted to do was make sure that we used kind of like that time before anything happens to prepare, to write protocols, procedures, to talk to industry stakeholders, sister agencies, and stuff like that. So that was really interesting. I really enjoyed that job, but I have, basically spent my entire life trying to get myself into being a food animal practitioner, and I wasn't just going to let that go because someone didn't want me to do it. So I'm back at it finally. I started my own practice, and I'm just like, honestly, looking back in the last couple of years and everything I kind of had to do to get here, I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful that I was able to find stuff to do to kind of stay current in the career and to feed myself. And I'm super grateful that I didn't have to leave the area because I love practicing here. It's beautiful. My clients are awesome. So yeah, I'm just honestly so psyched. Just so psyched to be back in the spot I'm at again. So,
do you no longer practice in Martha's Vineyard?
I still am going up there. So I'm going to go up there for 3 or 4 times a year. It depends on what the need is. And I'm there for a little less than a week each time.
I was
And
gonna
did
say,
you know that
you're-
Connecticut is actually spelled Connecticut, and that
Yes.
fucks up my head. Yes.
Mine as well. Yes.
Yeah, imagine teaching someone who doesn't know English, like tell them to like write a sentence like Wednesday we're going to Connecticut
Wednesday. Yeah.
Yes, Wednesday we're going to Connecticut.
with Brett Favre.
So yeah, that's what's up with me now. Yeah, back on the road again, loving it, psyched.
So I was gonna say, so full ambulatory again.
Yep, finally stopped vomiting from norovirus. Kids have been cooped up all winter.
I'm ambulatory in your job, not off the shitter.
Finally made it off the shitter. Yeah, it's been real. So yeah.
For those of you who don't know, norovirus is a current disease we have going around that causes a lot of GI distress.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big five of food safety.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, well, we're not here to talk about
Shitting.
or
food safety. Well, actually, technically, we are talking.
Actually,
about food
we
safety.
are. We are going to talk about both those things.
Well, yes.
So we'll get. I want to get to right at the beginning, just the baseline. What is the bird flu H5N1? Like, what's the difference between that and H1N1, which was the pig flu, swine flu?
Swine flu.
That was that was swine flu.
Flu.
So
what's the difference?
So in the big like umbrella of viruses, there's a whole category of influenza viruses. And then in that category, there's a big spread of different types of influenza viruses. What we talk about when we talk about avian influenzas falls under the type A subcategory. So influenza type A, and then under that, then you start
type A, the Eastern Asian city.
Ignore him and continue on.
Type Alpha.
So under type A, then the viruses are categorized into H's and N's, and there's 16 H's, I think, and 9 N's.
Yeah, it's the shell proteins, correct? The virus shells.
Yeah. So there's a huge number of like H, X, and Y's, however you want to put that. But then in that avian influenza category, you have, just to make it more confusing and add more names to things, you also have things that are assigned to either the low pathogenic or the high pathogenic avian influenza categories. So you'll often hear the term bird flu, but then you'll also hear or read the acronym HPAI, which is highly pathogenic avian influenza. But then sometimes you'll also hear low path or LPAI, so low pathogenic avian influenza. And basically it's just as those H and N proteins get identified in that virus's, I guess, genetic makeup is how it gets assigned. But the low pathogenic avian influenza, those are pretty much everywhere. So, and those are bird flu too. And sometimes I think people don't realize this, that when we talk about just bird flu as like that vague general term, bird flu is everywhere in a million different forms already. We have low path avian influenza all over the place. We have high path avian influenza all over the place. So I guess to answer your original question, that's kind of how all of those things are categorized. But then how those things interact is what helps us figure out how worried we have to be or not have to be, or predict how a virus is going to act in certain species.
So I absolutely love how much of epidemiology is like, how worried should we be about this?
Should we be like, oh, this is gonna suck, or is this like burn everything?
Yeah.
And hermit yourself in the mountains.
So as far as avian influenza goes, like, I think the important thing about this strain is what makes this different than the avian influenza that you have already said is everywhere all the time, all at once. and why is it now suddenly an issue?
Right. So I would actually say it's not suddenly an issue. I would say that it's about to suddenly be an issue. And it
So it
has
will get
about to
worse?
suddenly be an issue for a year. But
Okay.
so okay, the reason why there's all of this, like, should we be worried? Should we not be worried? Who knows? And kind of like hanging on tenterhooks there is because, so going all the way back to like that taxonomy, right? So how things are categorized in the influenza type A category, the thing that we worry about is the phenomenon of viral reassortment, right? So that's something that happens when two similar viruses, so say two influenzas or two bird flus inhabit the same creature, they can, do twister and swap genes and mutate. So the reason why we're like not worried but worried is because there's tons of low path around, there's tons of high path around, but when we've documented something and we know how it's acting and it doesn't seem to be mutating in these kind of like melting pot environments, and we kind of have gotten over the hype of something that's been around for a while because historically we know how it acts, when something new enters the picture, we don't know how it's going to swap genes with what's already there. And that's the scary part. It's not that like the bird flu is here, it's that we don't know this strain yet. We don't know how she's going to act when she gets drunk. You know what I mean? So, but because there's like a low path in every bird and like maybe some high path in some birds, when all those things meet up, we don't know how to predict what it's going to do. And that's why it often feels like with different bird flus. So we saw this in 2022. We saw this in 2016, 14. I can't remember. Is because it is one of those things where like you have to wait and see what it does. You don't want to overreact and allocate a bunch of resources and blow a bunch of money on something that ends up being just as run of the mill as the 33 other bird flus that we have. But at the same time, you need to be prepared for if this becomes the next pandemic, because the possibility that it will is always there, like hanging in the precipice.
Now,
Go
is
ahead.
this one does this one have a higher chance? Because you kind of beat me to the question on like, if we know it's coming, why don't we do something to stop it? But I understand now, like if it's going to be not a big deal, you don't waste your resources on something that's not a big deal. But what's different about this? Why is this one scaring people worse than the last few? Is this one a high pathogen? Is this one?
Yeah, this one is high path, and it has shown some proclivities that we don't love. So the first cases that we identified as H5N1 in the United States were in March of last year, so 2024. And right off the bat, the first premises that it was identified on, it already jumped like 3 or 4 species. Didn't mutate, but it was just hopping all over. And then immediately moved to, I think it was Wisconsin, and then spread across 6 different states around that area within like 2 weeks. So it hopped all over species in this farm in Texas, and then immediately jumped like all the way over to Wisconsin, and then just went kaboom. Didn't do anything crazy. It was just everywhere. So like the case numbers were large, and it was affecting so many species. So that's why there was this initial concern. And that's why it's been tracked and monitored so carefully. And there have already been some really, really thorough epidemiological studies on how it's acting. So, and then for a while there, at the tail end of 2024, it kind of looked like maybe it was just going to peter out, because it was not really getting its way into any new states. It wasn't mutating. It wasn't doing anything crazy. The human cases were super mild. And then suddenly in December, it entered the Northeast. We had 1 human death. And then in that human death, we discovered there were 3 viral mutations. Also at the same time, I don't know if this is common knowledge, but Ohio's been affected for quite some months, and they haven't really managed to clear it. which is concerning. It just keeps cycling back through the same premises, which you don't like.
Well, it's Ohio, so I mean.
Yeah, I actually just had a conversation yesterday how we should break up Ohio into 4 states that are all sub-states of different states. So you'd have like South Michigan, Eastern Indiana, North Kentucky, and Western West Virginia.
I think we would lose Kentucky completely to that plan.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't think there's anything the people of Kentucky hate more than Ohioans.
Listen, it's my plan and we're going with it.
All right.
So, okay. My virology, obviously, the last time I had virology was in class with you, which is going on almost over a decade ago now. And we spent more time singing Pearl Jam songs poorly than actually talking about viruses. Anyway, so my understanding of like how things like swine flu came about is like you had a pig farmer who had the flu and a pig who had swine flu, and then all of a sudden that pig farmer had both swine flu and, like you said, with the bird flu already, they just kind of like fucked around in that farmer's body, and that was how it gained the ability to jump species.
Yeah.
Have we had at this time, have we had person-to-person transmission that we know of with bird flu, or are we still in the, like, it's just people who are consuming raw products of species that have bird flu?
So far there's been no person-to-person transmission. But the people that have contracted it have gotten it from poultry or being around dairy cattle, let's say.
Okay.
So there's an occupational risk attached to every human case that there is here, but those humans have then gone home from work and not gotten anyone in their house sick.
But it sounds like it really fucks you up if it gets you, right?
No, it's been very mild. There's been something like 40-something human cases, and they've all been very mild. No one's gone to the hospital except for that one man in Louisiana.
Okay.
He probably got eaten by an alligator. And like
So from what I understand, he was older and he had a lot of comorbidities already, and he had multiple risk factors. So he was handling poultry at work and then domestic waterfowl at home, or vice versa, something like that. So he had like a double risk. But I mean, statistically speaking, in any case population, like, you can only have so many things before you pop an outlier, and you know what I mean?
That's fair. So with this, like, if you don't have the flu and you're around avian, or anything that's carrying the avian flu, can you still get it, or do you need to have like the flu in you? And then, like with the example with the pig farmer who had the typical flu, and then got the swine flu in there too. Is that the same way it works with avian flu, or can you just be like healthy, fine, a chicken sneezes on you and now you have bird flu?
Yeah, no, you can get it from overhandling a sick bird with bird flu. Yeah, you can. And that's like what we're seeing. Most of the people that have gotten it have either been working in a poultry facility or they're working in a milking parlor at a dairy. But no one yet has gotten sick from eating it from undercooked meats, which is good news. There is, we know, a very real risk of getting H5N1 from drinking raw unpasteurized milk or eating raw unpasteurized soft cheeses, but it hasn't actually happened yet. However, that's how most of the cats and rodents are obtaining this, is via raw milk injection. So
I recently did a bit on the Tic Tac application about raw milk because there was a veterinarian talking about bird flu, and someone asked me to comment on it, and I was like, well, I'm a white man with opinions, so I should obviously talk about these things. And I just brought up that I found raw milk disgusting. But one comment that I got in my plethora of hate mail from people who go way too fucking hard for raw milk was cows aren't birds, so raw milk doesn't have bird flu. Can you explain to us why raw
Yeah.
milk would have bird flu, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
because that
Erin,
was
because all you know, Erin, is what you have learned doing this as a job for like the last year, but you don't have the same breadth of education that these guys on TikTok who peaked in 10th grade have
me.
gotten through their YouTube
Well, hey,
videos.
let's not forget the trad wives, right? I
Yep.
mean,
Oh yeah.
they got to protect their raw milk too. So, I mean, the modality of testing of choice for diagnosing H5N1 in a ruminant animal, so a cow, a sheep, a goat, let's throw alpacas in there, even though they're pseudo ruminants, is milk testing.
What's
you
ruminant
can,
again?
A ruminant animal is an animal with 4 stomachs.
Okay.
Yeah. So is milk testing. So milk testing was the first diagnostic method that was chosen. You can test in other ways, blood, nasal swab, yada yada. But milk testing is like the most common means of diagnosing this in ruminants, specifically cows. I'll just say cows from now on, because the see, now I'm going to show how little I know about like diagnostic statistics, but the concentration of viral segments in milk is the most high it's going to be concentrated in the whole body. So you're the most likely, like if you're screening, you're most likely to get that positive and find what you're looking for in the milk. Would that be specificity or sensitivity? I can't remember. The CT value, let's go with that. So the CT value of milk is excellent for H5N1. If you're looking for it and you take a milk sample, a blood sample, a nasal sample, you're definitely finding what you're looking for in the milk. You may or may not have a false negative in other specimens. So I don't know like how to answer the question of like, how do birds become cow milk? But what I do know is that animals that are lactating are shedding viral segments, live viral segments in high concentrations in their milk.
Yeah, well, we can also go into great detail about how cows still carry tuberculosis, and that's also shed in high concentration in raw milk, and listeria, as well as like a bunch of other bacteria. And raw milk is acceptable at like up to 100,000 colony forming units for pasteurization, and that's disgusting. And people actually go out of their way and drink that. I also find pasteurized milk disgusting, but
whatever
like,
you
I
do,
can go on
how dare you?
Whatever you do to justify eating your Oreos with water, whatever, or more Oreos.
I dunk my Oreos in whiskey.
I am,
like God intended.
And I've said this to all of my clients and like all the producers when I was working the government job and all that. There are pathogens in raw milk that I am so much more afraid of than I am of H5N1.
Oh,
like so much more. Like if I got H5N1 tomorrow, I'd be like, it's fine. Ibuprofen 10 days later, like I'll be all right. There are other things though that scare the bejesus out of me. But
like what?
Listeria, brucellosis,
yes,
Q fever, which I just recovered from, by the way, salmonella, campylobacter. God, I mean, I could go on, and this is not like, I'm not trying to throw like a wrench into the discussion of like, oh, we should treat H5N1 seriously, but actually I'm not scared of it. I'm just trying to have like an even keeled, like very realistic conversation about different risks here. And part of the reason I'm doing this show with you guys is because I don't want people to be afraid of this. I would like for people to be informed and prepared, but not afraid. I'm not afraid of getting H5N1 drinking raw milk. I am so much more afraid of other things though that I could get in raw milk.
Yeah, that's why you go pasteurized. Speaking of milk though, so like this is kind of a weird question that I just thought of, but like if it is passed so easily, if a pregnant or not pregnant, but a lactating mother got bird flu, should she avoid breastfeeding the child? And I know that you said that it's not transitioning it's not spreading from people, but like most of these people, I'm assuming of these 40 weren't lactating mothers. I mean, I could be wrong, but
That's a really interesting question. So you can get, as a person, tested for H5N1. I think it's a nasal swab is the diagnostic of choice, but I would not be surprised if, by middle to end of this year, we had a lot more options, vaccination options, more diagnostic options. But I think the question you're posing is actually physiologically a really reasonable thing to be suspicious of. Yeah.
I had a good question. Why? So then also with this and like, why is it jumping from species to species? Like, it's jumping from birds to is it going to swine? Pigs too? Or is it mainly beef?
I think there are cases. I think there are swine cases. Don't quote me on
Okay,
that.
so it jumping all to these different animals. Is it because of their proximity, like by space? Is it because like a cow's not going to wash their hands after going to the bathroom or before they eat, or is it that much easier for a an animal to like a cow to get it than a human?
I think a lot of it is proximity, yeah, because a lot of this is like fecal oral transmission or milk injection, things like that. So when you're on a multi-species farm, I mean that risk is always there. And then you think about like the sort of dairy farm that's raising swine. It can be a pretty common practice for a farmer to take waste milk that isn't safe enough to go into commercial production and feed it out to their swine because that's a really healthy thing for swine, growing pigs. So you have things like that happening where farmers are doing their best to kind of like close the loop and have zero waste. So some of that swapping of resources happens like pretty commonly. I mean, think about like manure spreading. So if you have a manure bay on your farm and you go spread that in the spring, but you've had cats with H5N1 and birds with H5N1 also pooping into the same manure bay, then you're gonna spread it out all over your field. So yeah, I mean, things like that happen. I don't think people realize how much effort the ag industry goes through to recycle what they're making on their farm, even if what they're making is a waste product.
That makes sense, but so then with that case, in that case, then how easily could it be getting transitioned to like spinach or corn, anything that is out there, if that ends up getting into the manure spreading and it's getting spread out on crops?
That's an interesting hypothetical. I think I'm less worried about that than I would be a lactating mom or a breastfeeding mom. Just because of like the virus's capacity to live on surfaces and go through things like weather and different sprays and rain, viruses.
So it's not real hardy, not super hardy.
Yeah, so there's a few different ways that you can decontaminate and sanitize for this. And I just feel like on a crop that's got the sun on it and the rain and maybe some freeze-thaw cycles, probably the risk for that would be lower.
Okay. Because I mean, like, I know E. coli has spread like that.
Yeah, E. coli would be a bacteria that's so much harder to sanitize away. But I mean, this is definitely me speaking hypothetically. So everything I just said about that, I don't actually know. I'm just guessing.
Well, this can also all change on a dime too, right? All it takes is one mutation and everything that we've been talking about has been turned on ear, correct?
Yeah, I mean that's part of the hard thing about doing disease work in the public eye too, is because I'm not sure how much people realize that we don't know everything, and we have to take educated guesses that are based on the information that we gathered from colleagues who are really experienced with similar things. Oftentimes, we're doing the best that we can. And I feel like that's what we went through as a society with COVID. Like we were trying to stay ahead of it. We were trying to make the best possible guesses, but like you don't know sometimes.
Yeah, and like that was the problem with COVID, was really people we're like, oh, see, scientists don't know everything, they're wrong all the time. And like that's true. Like,
but yeah, that's true.
a good scientist is right like 5% of the time.
Yeah.
And so it's like we're doing, and people just aren't used to watching science in action like that. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Corey. Wow, I must not be feeling good because last 2 episodes I've like managed to like say Corey's right about something. Like
Yeah, Corey,
everything
you're
we're
so
learning
smart.
today
You're so
could
right.
change.
I am.
tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you. See, you hear that, Kent? Corey is so
Yeah.
smart. So one thing that's interesting about this episode versus any of the others we've done before, we actually hosted questions ahead of time because
Yes.
because you are, or fielded questions because you are the expert in this, at least compared to us, and you know way more
Oh,
than
I'm so excited.
not only more than us, but like probably I'd say what, a solid 99.993% of the people out there.
Erin has been on the front lines of bird flu, so like that's probably like a group of probably 30 people.
Right.
Yeah,
Like
I don't
really,
know.
really,
I
couple
mean,
hundred.
like I don't know. I don't know if I would go that far. I mean, the
Okay.
crazy thing about me having the job that I had was I was like not at all qualified to be there because I don't have like extra degrees and stuff. It's like
The fun part about capitalism is we're all promoted to a position of incompetence. So, like,
Yeah.
if you excelled at that job at all, then congratulations. That was not your last stop in this twisted hellscape of capitalism that we live in.
So we got to, I'll push this along here.
Yes,
So
listener
we got
questions.
we got
I
a few
love it.
questions. We got a few questions from Megan. Her first one we kind of touched on, but she asked, like, is it only animals that can get it? Are humans able to be affected by it? And obviously we said like yes, but what precautions can keep a person safe from the bird flu?
Okay. So yeah, right now risk to general public is considered to be very low. If you have occupational risk, so if you are working on a poultry farm, working on a dairy farm, I would go as far to say working in a veterinary clinic where you see cats, your risk is elevated from mild to maybe like mild to moderate. So far, we have found this virus in so many species, and I'm not gonna remember them all, but it's like foxes, coyotes, rats, mice, ferrets, dogs, cats, cows, sheep, goats, alpacas, rabbits, birds of all kinds, geese, et cetera, et cetera. So it's in everything. But if you were in a state that's not affected, for example, and you're working in any kind of risk area and you want to keep yourself safe, basic PPE, gloves, face mask, booties. And when you're out of the area where you're in direct contact with a sick animal, you can just take that stuff off. Now, if you're in an affected state, you might want to crank it up a notch. But if you're working in an area where you have occupational risk, your place of business is probably going to start enacting protocols soon anyways.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then she asked, the next question that Megan asked was the likelihood that avian flu, and I apologize for not looking at you guys. I'm kind of trying to follow ahead on my questions. The likelihood that the flu becomes endemic, and how could it be managed if it does become so?
So it's already pretty prevalent in a number of states. And I think there's a difference right now between it being present on certain premises, so on certain dairy farms or certain poultry farms, versus like it being something that the general public is having transmission issues with, like in schools or at the workplace. So I think as long as it's a disease of veterinary significance, the USDA and State Department of Agriculture are going to be the ones formulating those plans, and it's going to be on a state by state basis, not a federal basis. So that's the way it's going to get handled.
There's no federal, like the Department of Ag doesn't get involved. The Federal Department of Ag doesn't get involved or anything like that.
That would
Depends
be
on
the
how far-reaching it
USDA.
is.
Right.
Oh,
So
sorry,
the
USDA.
USDA is always there to oversee, to give guidance, to help with disease containment. But in terms of regulating what people, farms have to do, that's up to the states. Okay. So if this became a disease of importance in the human arena, I think then you would start to see more federal regulations coming in.
Okay.
But that also then becomes a public health, Department of Health, like a people problem more than an ag problem.
Okay. All right.
That don't make sense.
Yeah.
So then it's a CDC issue, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Right. That makes sense. What would be the risk of eating poultry, even if it was cooked, brought to temp and everything, the 165 that it should be, and eggs from infected chickens?
So for poultry, as long as you're cooking up to 165, even if the bird died of confirmed bird flu, you would still be safe. So as long as
Right.
you're cooking up to the temps you have to. Eggs, I honestly don't know if the virus is infiltrating through the eggshell and into the egg product. I would be surprised if any eggs made it to market from commercial farms that had cases, though, because probably there would be mass depopulations.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I
'Cause
don't see.
Now I
don't
could
know.
see it being on the shell, because I mean sometimes you see a little bit of bird poop from obviously where it comes from, being on the shell. Like if they crack the shell, they don't wash their hands correctly. That could be a concern, especially if you got the eggs, maybe not from a commercial place, but I mean I can't swing a dead cat around here without hitting a sign for
Eggs.
roadside fresh eggs. Yeah.
Yeah, fecal material on eggs. I mean, that's a whole other ball of wax. Again, there are things I'm way more afraid of with that. E. coli, salmonella, Campylobacter, that kind of thing. But also, the eggshell is protective to a degree from what's inside the egg. So there could be pathogens on the eggshell that are not inside of the egg. So as long as you're not like cracking an egg that my 2-year-old would crack it, where she just like Hulk smashes it onto the table and then like rubs the dirty shell into the yolk and then goes, "I did it."
Is that not how we crack eggs?
I would think you'd be safe, especially again if you're like scrambling or hard scrambling. Now I like a runny yolk, but I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Megan's gonna be disappointed in you.
Sorry, Meg.
She's very understanding. She'll appreciate that you answered her questions, by the way.
A question from Ellen is what should I do if my dog gets a hold of a bird? And along with that, I'm gonna say like house cats, kind of adding to that question. So a bird's outside, it's either hunted or a dead one, and dog gets a hold of it. Should they get tested right away?
Yeah. So if your dog or a cat eats a bird that they found outside, let's say for, conversation's sake, we don't know if the bird was dead before the dog got it or if the dog killed the bird during the scuffle. I would say if you're in a state with active cases, I would just call DEP and have them come get the bird. They can probably ask more questions that will help them decide to test or not to test the bird, but at least you did, everything that you should be doing. And if you were, wait a second, did I just say an affected case, an infected state? What did
Yes.
I said affected, right?
Yeah.
If you were
affected,
if you were in an unaffected state, I don't know that I would do much. I mean, it's kind of up to your state. Like some states are doing a lot of surveillance, even though they're not affected, they still might want to get their hands on that bird just to test it for surveillance sake. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, but it definitely, if you're in a state with active cases or it's, getting closer and closer, I would get that bird tested. That's going to be DEP, not your Department of Agriculture. And then in terms of your own pet, I would just observe. So If you had a cat get your hands on that bird, I would be pretty concerned in an affected state because cats have one of the higher mortality rates. And it's very rapid onset, and it could be severe neurological signs in the beginning. So if your cat seemingly gets extra lethargic or something, I would get your cat to the emergency room. A dog, likely to have a much milder case, probably no mortality, so I would just observe the dog.
So the way it affects different animals is different depending on the animal. I said that really stupid, but different animals are affected differently because it sounds like a dog and a cat get the same thing. Cat,
yes,
is, and then I'm assuming like most birds are high risk, hence the bird flu.
Cats and chickens, specifically domestic cats and chickens, are having the highest mortality rates. They're into the 90%. So,
oh wow,
yes, extremely high mortality rates. Yeah,
10 cats get it, 9 die.
Yeah.
Oof.
So
yeah, so keep your cats
within
inside.
I think it's like 48, 72 hours or something. It's very fast. And now other types of felids are also getting severe cases, but they're having better survivability than house cats are.
Gotcha. We kind of covered this too, but Scott asked, can it be spread via bird poop? And I'm going to lump together with that. Katie asked, like my cat loves to roll on my shoes. If I was to step in bird shit and then take off my shoes, what are the odds of transference?
Yeah, I mean, again, if you're in an affected state and there's bird flu like in your environment and you stepped in wild bird poop and then brought your shoes inside and your cat rubbed up against them, that's a high risk situation for your cat. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the best way to control that? Just
to protect your cat.
Shoes. Keep the shoes locked up.
Yeah. What I'm recommending to people with indoor cats is just if you're in an affected state and the cases are around you, any shoes you wear outside, take them off outside, leave them outside. Same thing with outerwear. So leave your coat hanging outside the door, stuff like that until this all blows over.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that worried about it with dogs, but with cats, I mean, good luck. It's a very rapid, very fatal illness.
Yeah, I already said with cats, it's really really bad. We have a Matteo asking, any risk that eating beef is infected, especially like say a steak, and if you like to eat that steak rare, do you have a higher chance of a rare steak versus a well done steak?
Yeah.
Of course, would you really want to live after ordering a steak well done?
I wouldn't. Personally,
I mean, that's
I only
eat
meat. Steak rare. So yeah, all of the food safety studies that have been performed so far have come out the back end saying beef that's infected is safe if you cook it up to 165 for sure. But again, like I would rather not eat a 165-degree steak. But a lot of these, oh my God, I'm blanking. A lot of these studies, if you really read them carefully, they were finding that the virus was just as inactivated at 120 degrees as it was at 165. It's just no one feels comfortable making that recommendation.
Right, yeah.
So 120 apparently still safe. So I mean, I would split the difference. I think what is 135 a rare steak?
No, 135 should be medium.
Okay.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I think 120 to 125 is rare.
Yeah, so if you're a rare steak kind of guy, I would say like maybe just like swallow the hard to swallow pill and go medium rare just to be on the safe side until this all blows over. But
130 to 135 is med rare. 140 to 145 is medium. There we go.
And anything above that is
garbage.
Garbage, yes.
An egregious waste.
Yes. I want to get a tomahawk steak and just char it.
Yeah, I mean.
This next one comes from a Kent M. And it's Should Big Bird be worried?
Yeah, Big Bird should be worried. Big Bird should be very worried.
I mean, that okay, so let's give context to that comment.
I never said it was you. It was a Kent M. He didn't put this last name, so there's no guarantee
Yes.
that it was,
As we
that
were
it was
planning
you.
this episode, we claimed that Erin was in the pocket of Big Bird. Anyway.
So what's the context?
That's the context.
There's no context. I made up
wasn't
that shit
asking
right there.
about a Muppet. It was just
Yes.
the fact that we said Big Bird in a sentence, and I used a
Yes.
gift Muppet right after that. That is where that comment comes from.
All right. My stepdad, Brian, actually just asked.
Brian.
Yes, he knows that it's spread through milk.
Mhm.
And asking about if it's spread through chicken meat, which we've already established.
Mhm.
Yes, it potentially is. Excuse me. Are they treating any meat with radiation?
Oh goodness. I don't know, but what's wrong with cooking the meat with heat?
Well, he doesn't know that. I mean, obviously cooking it, but is there any extra precautions you can do, like UV radiation or anything like that, to play it extra safe?
I don't know. Yeah, I got nothing on that.
Or would that even work? I just got a follow up. I got the follow up question. Would this even work?
It would probably work, I would think.
Just cook it, Brian. Put it on the grill.
UV radiation. Can you hold it out like up to the sun?
Put it in the sous vide.
like hold it up in the sunlight, like it's Simba at the beginning of Lion King.
To
Would it
absorb
probably be
enough
all right?
UV radiation, you would have to be there for a long time.
That's fair. And then my last question that I've got is from Lori. And how would you treat an animal with it? Like, because I mean, she's got chickens. Should, like, if you start seeing a bird with it, like if you have a flock of chickens, if one already has it, do you need to naturally assume that the rest have it? And how do you treat that?
So here's how it goes.
Is it a death sentence?
Yes. Here's how it goes in chickens.
Okay.
Most chicken owners and chicken farmers do not realize that their birds have HPAI. So that's H5N1 or any of the other high path avian influenzas until the first mortalities begin. So in, let's say, hour 0 is when they get the virus. Maybe if you're incredibly observant, the only thing you may notice is a slight decrease in water consumption in your chicken flock. Before 24 hours later, you're losing 5+ birds every 8 to 12 hours. There's a 97, I think, % mortality rate in chickens. The whole thing will wipe your flock out in a day or two. There's no treatment for chickens. So you should report it. It's going to be infective in a huge radius from your house. So if you have neighbors with chickens and you care about your chickens and your chickens get HPAI, the kindest thing you can do for your neighbor is euthanize your flock. They're going to die anyway. And it's hard to hear, but that's the truth. And Department of Agriculture's, they will, or USDA, they will do that for you. You don't have to do that. They'll do it for free. They'll help you contain and mitigate it to try to make it so your neighbors' flocks don't get it. All that stuff. So in terms of like how to treat it in poultry, it's not going to happen. Now, in other animals, I mean, cats and dogs aren't really my purview, haven't been in some time. I'm assuming with cats, if you catch it in time, it's going to probably be supportive care, symptomatic treatment. So controlling the neurological signs. Cats could have seizures with this. So maybe, you know, I don't know how do they treat seizures in cats anymore? I used to do diazepam drips.
Diazepam stuff,
okay,
yeah.
Okay. So diaz drip in the hospital on fluids, anti-inflammatories, nursing care, whatever you got to do. I mean, I'm sure there's probably going to be antiviral options for the small animal world that we're not going to really have in the large animal world. So that's great. In the dog species and the pocket pet species, it's going to be much more mild. So fluids, anti-inflammatories, things like that. In the realm of cattle, should I answer that question? How you treat cattle?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cattle, sheep, and goats, it's a much milder thing. So they get feverish for about 5 to 10 days. They have a drop in milk production. They could get very viscous milk. So biggest thing is just anti-inflammatories, fluid support, making sure that they're eating enough, keeping their gut moving. So some vitamin B complex. And making sure they don't develop mastitis because that milk does thicken. So you just want to make sure they're expressing normally.
Right.
And they should pull through it without a whole lot of effort.
And Brian just sent me another question. Are cattle in these areas? He's a huge fan of the show, loves the show. Thinks,
Me too, Brian. Me too.
He thinks Brian's smart and funny. So, I mean, like, he's definitely not, not all there, but
yeah, I think he just referred to me as Brian.
I think he did.
Yeah.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm not all there either.
It's fun to put down someone's intelligence and screw up their name in the same sentence.
No, you think Brian is funny, and
oh
Are
no.
you guys okay?
Anyway,
Do you guys need a counselor?
What is
we're
is
always
Brian's
like this.
question, Corey?
We're always going back. We always bicker like a married couple. Our cattle who are on property where a case has been confirmed, are they being inspected in any way, or is it just kind of assumed that they have it?
So this is a reportable problem. This is a reportable disease. So if you identify it on a farm, there's going to be oversight. There'll be state oversight. There will be federal oversight. So they are being observed, watched, retested frequently, and monitored until they're clear. And the average time until they're clear is about 7 to 10 days. So it's not a long time. The other thing Brian reminded me of in this question is I'm seeing so much really horrible media coming out of California right now because they're really going through it with the bird flu. Just full of like horrible jump scare misinformation. So in California, I'm seeing these articles come out with pictures of like ditches that have like 50 dead cows piled high in them and stuff, and they're claiming this is from bird flu. This is not the case. The pictures are unrelated, from different time, different place. So again, this has been relatively mild in cattle. Are some cows ending up in the food chain, so in effect being cold because of this? Yes. That doesn't mean they're dying from this. And you're not going to put a cow in a dead pit because of this virus. Okay. It's so easy to get them through it. If for some reason they have to go get colds, they're going to be moved into the meat production system, the meat industry. They're not just going to be shot and thrown in a ditch. So if you're seeing something like that,
right,
please do not believe it.
That goes back to the new Facebook policy of we're letting anyone say whatever they want on Facebook, and it is a shame. But so it is good to be attacking this misinformation head on. So
the amount of misinformation I've seen around H5N1, particularly coming out of the California area, is so upsetting. And to be honest with you, and I'm gonna do a bold thing here, a lot of it's coming from colleagues, small animal veterinary influencer colleagues. So I've seen a lot of this coming from profiles of those like vets who are trying to make it big on Instagram or whatever. They're the ones who are purporting and putting out a lot of this information. So if you're listening to this, I see you.
Stop it.
You got to knock it off. I think.
Fortunately, Corey and I are just trying to make it average. We're not trying to make it big anywhere.
Yes.
We would like
except for Iceland.
Average.
Except for Iceland.
Iceland. We are huge in Iceland.
Huge.
Well, okay. States that I know that have reported HPAI in poultry are, as far as I know, and are there any you can add to this list? California, Texas, Minnesota, Alabama, Mississippi, Wisconsin, Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, and Oregon. So those are the main places that, as far as I know at this time, need to be on the lookout. Are there any that you know that I am not privy to at this time?
So if you go to the CDC's basically joint reporting page with USDA APHIS, they have an interactive map.
Okay.
So far they're saying 50, they're saying 51 states detect. That can't be true. There's only 50 states. Hold on.
This was specifically HPAI in poultry, so it doesn't include in other animals or in dairy
H5N1. Are you being specific to H5N1?
No.
Okay.
I have it H5N1. I have listed in 16 states total.
Yeah,
because
that sounds
avian
right.
flu,
16 states sounds right to me. Yeah.
Because avian flu, kind of circling back to what we talked about earlier, literally is everywhere all the time.
Yes.
California, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, Texas, Iowa, Utah, Minnesota, New Mexico, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Nevada, North Carolina, Ohio, and Wyoming.
Is Connecticut on that list?
It's pronounced Connecticut.
Is Connecticut on that list?
I do not see it on this list currently.
Okay. Or Vermont. Vermont is also affected now as well. But what I was going to say is if you look up, there's two different resources you can look up. So the USDA has an interactive map of where you can find active cases. It'll tell you what state, what county, and how many birds died because of it in that county for H5N1 or HPAI. So if you're curious about just HPAI in general, there's an interactive map for HPAI that the USDA makes and maintains. They update weekly. And then there's also one for H5N1. I think it's bi-weekly updated. So you can find all the latest stats there.
Okay, excellent, excellent.
But that list sounds current other than Connecticut and Vermont.
I want to wrap up, but we got a few more questions. But this one, has this been affecting the price of food going up, and how will it impact it more as we roll forward?
Yeah, I don't know what the economics have been in like the immediate wake of it, because this has been occurring for a little less than a year, but I'm sure that it will. I can't see how it doesn't, especially with California having as many issues with containment as they have and moving a lot of their dairy cows into the beef industry. I mean, that is going to drive up the dairy prices in that state. I'm sure it's going to start affecting poultry prices, both for meat and eggs. I think in 2022, what we saw was a pretty significant uptick in poultry, so chicken and egg prices.
Well, those prices went up. Hold on, those prices went up because Biden hit the eggs more expensive.
Price go up, yes.
Yeah,
it sits on the president's desk.
And we're gonna talk about that someday, right? Because that whole premise of food prices going up as related to like world economics, trades, presidencies, we should discuss. Because we're about to see some shit go down here, I think.
We do want to have you back on sometime this season to discuss policy, as far as like presidential policy and how in the course of 2016 to 2020 we yada yada yada.
Some really wild stuff happened to the beef industry and the dairy industry in those 4 years because of decisions that were made out of pocket and for a lack of understanding of how agriculture works. And we're going to see it again. It's going to happen again. But as it relates to H5N1, yes, it's going to affect prices. That doesn't mean you should go buy your own flock of chickens right now and raise your own eggs so that they're cheaper. That's a fallacy. Don't do that.
But yeah, it's very expensive, right? Like,
yes, it is. But I think the thing that makes this different in terms of like food accessibility versus other HPAIs is the way that this is affecting dairy cattle, because we haven't seen other HPAIs hit the dairy commodity line like this before. So what I was saying about cows are typically doing okay. They're a little bit febrile. They're having a little bit of a digestive issue, but their milk is thickening. That's the most common clinical sign in cattle. So if milk in any way differs from a very consistent quality in any way, it can't go to commercial production. So because that's the main effect of this in dairy cattle, so much milk product isn't making it to the shelf. And that's of economic significance this time in a way that it hasn't been before.
That will drive up the price because the supply and demand piece. But then also if eggs, if you have birds dying, birds can't be making more eggs. But then of course then it expands too. What the fuck are you laughing at?
I just keep thinking that clearly Erin's wrong, because I've seen TikToks of dozens of cows put into death pits. Clearly she's in the bucket of Big Bird somehow.
Big Bird. God damn it.
I missed
I
it,
had
guys.
a good question too. All right.
It's been half a year since we did this. I don't know
Has
how
it really
made
been
it.
that long?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
this season, I
sitting here
think,
laughing
3
at my own
times.
terrible joke, but just imagining Erin in the pocket of actual Big Bird.
Like a koala pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah, big yellow. Gee, Erin, who do we want to rip off today?
Let's increase those egg prices, Snuffleupagus. That's Big Bird's voice. I do a terrible Big
But
last week would have been a bad week to be in Big Bird's pocket with the norovirus and all.
That would have been a shitty pocket.
Yeah.
But so it's like a domino effect, though. Obviously, if the eggs are going to become even more expensive because now you don't have as many chickens laying as many eggs, you don't have as much milk. So anything that is made that is milk based, anything that is made that is egg based, from bread to brownie mixes to yogurt to cheese to whatever, obviously that's going to have to get more expensive on the front end too, correct?
Yeah, I mean, everything affects everything indirectly in terms of like food economy. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if we had to start importing stuff more, that's going to be a challenge too. So,
but the other countries are going to pay the tariffs, so I'm not worried about that.
Yes. Food will be cheaper because tariffs are a beautiful word.
Yeah.
And then I actually only have one more question for you for tonight before we log off. And this is probably the most important question I'm going to ask you in this entire day. What's your favorite Angela Bassett movie?
Oh my God. I don't know. Can I Google it really quick?
Yes, you
sure.
can.
Okay. I almost slipped up too and said Angelica Houston.
Angelica Houston. You can
but
also
it's Angela
use
Bassett. Yeah.
An Angelica Houston movie if you can't think of an Angela Bassett one.
Oh boy. I have seen none of these.
None of you Stella got her groove back?
You've seen Black Panther?
No, I haven't. Panther? No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. Well, you should go see Black Panther.
Yeah, as soon as we're done with this interview, as soon as we're done with this episode, shut this down.
I went all the way back to 1986, and I haven't seen a single one of her movies, including Kindergarten Cop.
You never saw How Stella Got Her Groove Back too? Electric Boogaloo?
I haven't. Thank you for clarifying, but I haven't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Come on, girl. It's time to get your groove back again. And
am I fired?
Great. No, it's fine. Okay. We actually just expect you to go on a Angela Bassett world tour soon. That's fine. It's going to be embarrassing when you're on the show with us and her.
I noticed that she was tagged for Q&A.
She gets tagged in everything these days.
Everything. She doesn't return my calls though. It's very depressing because she is such a great actress. I would love to have her on. As big of fans as Iceland is of us, we are equally big of fans as Angela Bassett. We are.
Yeah.
You guys have an Icelandic following?
Apparently,
We are #1 in Iceland.
we're the number
Our
one
podcast-
veterinary podcast in Iceland.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
both of the Icelandic people listen to us.
Yeah.
Did that lady with the chickens write in with any questions about her chickens? Or is that
was
Lori?
Lori. Yeah,
Okay.
that was Lori.
Cool. Hey, Lori. Awesome.
Wrapping for small animal practitioners, any like history questions if we see cats with respiratory problems or seizures coming in
Yeah.
that you would recommend we add to our
100%. Do you feed your cat a raw food diet? Do you let your cat drink raw milk? If you drink raw milk and it drips on the kitchen floor, do you keep bird feeders outside? Does your cat ever go out on the patio? Is it indoor, outdoor, strictly indoor? Do you have chickens? What do you do when you come inside from feeding your chickens? Do you take off your footwear, your outerwear, all of that? Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
If they have a normal indoor cat and no chickens, we very minimal risk of our cats getting bird flu, correct?
I think, honestly, it just depends on if your state's affected or unaffected. I mean, if you're in an affected state and it's a rapid onset of neurological signs, I wouldn't rule it out, even if it's an indoor only cat. There's no chickens, no bird feeders. I really wouldn't, because what we found in the early 2024 epidemiological studies of this is that this is getting everywhere that it's getting via fomite. So either footwear or truck tires. So anyone could go outside for a walk and come inside and track it into their house. Yeah.
I kind of just assumed it was getting places because of birds, I guess.
Yes,
because they fly and
because of birds pooping and then foam.
A bird just fly.
Well, yeah, but like
a bird just flies up to you like a pigeon out in the street and just walks up to you and achoo, and now you have bird flu. That's how it happens.
Yes, that's how it happens. No, but they migrate. That's the word for it, right?
They fly all around. Yeah. Unless they're big bird, who I assume is landbound and bipedal.
I do believe Big Bird is flightless. I've never seen him fly.
Could emu be affected?
Yes. Emu could be affected.
And he's also
seizures in an
bird.
emu is something I don't ever want to see again. So,
man.
In
Liberty
case you were
Mutual
wondering,
lose their mascot.
There was once a emu war in Australia that the emus actually won.
The emus won.
Yeah. Anyway.
That is true. And not with biological warfare.
No, now they would bring bird flu around and
they'd offer the soldiers blankets laced with
H5N1. Anyway.
But yeah, one more fine point back to the fomite thing. If you're the kind of person who's got your backyard chicken flock or whatever, and your neighbor or your sister across town has one too, just be aware as this enters your state and becomes more prevalent in your state, that if you like to go visit your chickens and then go to your sister's house or your neighbor's house or whatever, and then F with her chickens, that's the major risk there. So you have to be thinking about where your feet and your tires are going from place to place.
What is fomite?
Fomite is an inanimate object that can essentially become inoculated with a pathogen and pass it from one situation to another. Tires, footwear, a fork, toddler sippy cup.
It's why you wear a mask when you have a minor upper respiratory infection, so you don't sneeze on like a keyboard and then someone else comes around and touches the keyboard and then rubs their eye, and now all of a sudden like a million people in the United States died because of that. Anyway, so again, I think we're about all wrapped up here, unless you have anything else you would like to impart.
I mean, I can literally talk about high-path avian influenza for hours, so you got to cut me off somewhere. I would just do it. Yeah.
I think that's a good spot.
I think it's better that we just tell people where to find you, because I know you've been doing updates on both your TikTok and Instagram as well.
And as of right now, TikTok is still up, or back up
for the next 90 days, I'm told. So I want to give us a shout out to your social medias.
Yeah, so the name of my business is Sheep, as in the animal, Rock Vet. So sheep.rock.vet. And that works for Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I don't have a Twitter. Also, or an X. And YouTube. So I do regular updates there, and it's basically the same thing. I just forward it across all platforms, but that's how you can find me. And I do answer questions often. So if you ever have questions about things, I'll either make it into a video or I'll just hit you back on your comment and reply.
Yeah, you're pretty awesome like that. And you put up with me and Kent, so like that makes you extra awesome.
Yeah.
And saintly.
People that tolerate us are a special breed. All right.
Yes.
Corey, want to take us out for the
episode? Thanks again, Erin. It's always it's a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
This has been the latest episode of VetMed for Idiots by Idiots. I've been your host, Corey the Common Idiot, for my co-host, Kent the Doctor Idiot, and we are saying, have the day you deserve. Bye.
That outro gets worse every time. Bye.
When do I hit stop?